Hi there, welcome back to the channel, and today we are going to learn how to handle API in JavaScript. I'm going to give you a complete guide on how to handle API in JavaScript. So without any delay, let's begin. So in order to handle API, we need some form of APIs, right? So we have here JSON placeholder API, the pretty famous API. We are going to use this API and we're going to see how to handle APIs in JavaScript. So we have got different APIs for post, comments, albums. So I'm more interested in post here. So these are the posts that I'll be getting via API call. So without any delay, let's begin. Let's jump into the code and start handling APIs. So as you can see, I have a API folder out here open in my VS Code, and here I do have a style.css file created. Now I'm going to create two more files. The first one obviously is going to be index.html file. Okay, and now I'm going to generate some HTML template, and once the template is generated using Emmet, I also want to create a JS file here. The file name is going to be app.js file. Okay, so we have created all the three files, and as you might have noticed this CSS file. So here in my CSS file I have already pre-written some of the CSS. I don't want to make this tutorial focused on CSS because here we are going to learn how to handle APIs, right? So these are just basic CSS which I have written, but don't worry, I'm going to explain it to you on the later section out there. So let's just get started quickly. Here in the document section, I'm going to write handling APIs. Okay, now I'm going to create a div with a class container in it, and inside that what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one more div with class that is going to be post list container. Okay, so all these are Emmet shortcuts that I'm using in order to generate this div. Now inside this post list container, I'm going to write an h1 tag, and there I'm going to write some awesome post. Okay, and now under the post list container div, I'm going to write one more div, and that is going to be post container. Okay, that's it. And now inside this div, inside this post container div, I'm going to generate some of the post via JavaScript. I'm going to call an API here, a JSON placeholder API, and I'm going to throw those posts. I'm going to inject all those posts inside this post container. So let us run this. Okay, before running this, I need to insert this JavaScript file here inside my HTML file. So for that, I need my script tag. Here I'm going to write app.js. okay, and after that I also need to link my CSS file out here. This is my CSS file. Once this two is being inserted, let me run. So I'm going to run using this live server. If you don't have, you can install this live server. Okay, it's running, and as you can see, here we go, we have this some awesome post written out here. So you might be seeing all this styling, and I told you all this styling is applied here. You can pause the video and then you can write this CSS, or you can like pretty much ignore the CSS, since here we are going to learn how to handle APIs. Okay, now let's move to the JavaScript file and start writing some JavaScript. So before I start, I want to grab this post container div out here so that I can inject the post. So I need to do here const post container. Okay, and here I'm going to remove this hyphen and I'm going to write it in this way. Now I just want to grab it using document dot query selector, and here since it is a class, so I'm going to give dot and I'm going to write it. So in this way I can grab it. So you might be aware with the concept called DOM manipulation. Once that is done, now I'll start calling an API. I'll start calling the get API. So we can see here in the JSON placeholder. So this is the API that we need to call it's JSON placeholder dot typecode dot com/post. So if we hit this API endpoint, we are going to get all this series of posts out here. So let's try to do that. So in order to do that, I need to create a function that is going to be async function. So I'm going to write async keyword and write function out here. And since I'm trying to get the post, so I'm going to name the function as get post. And here I'm expecting a URL. Okay, the function body is done. After that, I need to fetch it. So in order to fetch the API, I'm going to use the concept called async await. So I'm just going to write it here, response is equals to await fetch, and inside this fetch I'm going to pass this URL. Okay, don't worry about this syntax, I'm going to explain you in a bit. After that is done, I'm going to write data, create a variable. Again, I'm going to write await keyword. After that, I'm going to write response dot JSON format. Okay, that is being done out here. And now here what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this function called get post, and I'm going to pass the URL out here. Okay, that's cool. Now let me try to console.log the data out here. Now what is happening is, let me explain it out here. So here inside this, I am passing the API out here, this URL, and it is receiving out here, and I'm trying to call this API. So in order to call this API, we use this keyword called fetch. We use this fetch API function that is given to us by the browser, and inside this fetch function, we need to pass the URL that is we are receiving here. Once we pass the URL, this fetch function is going to return us some promises, and based on that, either we can get the data as a response, or we can get some kind of an error. And there are multiple ways of handling it. So I have used the pretty famous and easy concept called async await. So how it is working, let me explain. So first I have created a variable called let response, and now here inside this variable I'm storing whatever this fetch is fetching via this URL. And why am I writing this await keyword? Because I want to await for some minutes, right? Not for some minutes, but for some seconds. Because if I don't await it, means if I'm not going to wait, then what is going to happen is it is going to take some time, right? So since this data is stored somewhere in the server, now it needs to call that data, and if I don't wait it here, then all these lines of code is going to be executed, and here some kind of undefined value is going to stored inside the response. So I need to await here till I receive the data, and once this fetch functions receives some kind of data from the server, then only it is going to assign it in the response. But if I don't do await, then it is going to assign some random value, because it is going to take some seconds to fetch those data, right? So that's why we need to write await out here. And once we get that data, we got that response from the server, right? After that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one more variable, that is let data, and then I'm going to write again await response.json. Now okay, you might be saying, hey, I've already received the data, now why am I doing this response.json? Because this response which I have got is in the form of promise, right? And I need to convert it in the JSON format. That's why I'm going to write it as response.json in order to get it into the JSON format. Now once I do that much, I've got all my API calls stored inside this data variable. So let me show you here. Let me go to the browser out here, and then as you can see, so there are different posts that I can see here. You can see pretty much like 100 posts out there all. Now if I want to access individual, like you can see here are like pretty much 100 elements. Like this is the 0th element, it is having its body, it is having its ID, it is having its title and user ID. Now I can access pretty much any property out here. So let's say I want to access the first element of an array. So I'm going to write square bracket 0, and I just want to access the title. So I'm just going to write the title, and now it is going to give me title out here. So as you can see, I can get the title out here. Cool. So yeah guys, this is how we handle APIs in JavaScript. That's pretty simple. Hope you understood it. But this is not enough, right? We want to get all this data, and we want to inject those data inside this HTML out here. So how can we do that? So let's process it out here. So in order to do that, I'm going to create one more function. Okay, so here I'm going to write return, and I'm going to call a function called display post, which I'm going to create right now, and I'm going to pass this data out here. Okay, so I'm going to create this function called display post here. Okay, I can write a top also here. So I'm going to write function display post. Okay, and here in this function I'm going to inject all this data, and then I'm going to inject here inside this HTML. So let's see how we are going to do that. So in order to do that, first I have received this data out here, right? So data means all this data which you have seen here. So now I'm just going to map this data out here. So map is a function which helps me to iterate over all this element inside the array. So I'm going to use this map function out here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to write here data, or I'm just going to write here post, because I'm iterating every single post out here. And inside this function I'm going to create a div. So how can we create a div inside JavaScript? That's pretty simple. I just need to say document dot create element. Okay, so I have this function called create element. So inside this, if I write div, then I'm basically creating a div here in this variable. Now once I create a div, I just want to add a class inside a div. So in order to add a class inside div, I just need to do div dot class list dot add, and I want to give the name of the class as post. So here notice, like, I have written all the CSS for this class that I have been adding out here. So here inside this div I am adding a class called post. Once that is done, now I want to write some HTML inside this div which I have just created. So how can I write? So in order to write, I can do div dot inner HTML, and I can give this backticks, and now inside this I can write the HTML of my choice. So basically I have created a div out here, and inside this div I'm writing HTML using div dot inner HTML, and here I'm going to say h3. Okay, so here Emmet is not suggesting me anything, and inside this h3 what I'm going to write is I'm going to say dollar, and I'm going to write post dot title. So here, as you can see, this data, this map function is iterating over every single post that I am having, and I'm grabbing that one single post, and I'm trying to put that post title inside this h3 tag. So that's why I'm writing post dot title out here. Now below that I'm going to create another paragraph tag for the body, obviously, and here I want to add some kind of class also, so that it looks little bit better. And here I'm going to say post body, and I'm going to write same class here in h3 as well, and instead of body I'm going to write title, and again I'm going to give dollar curly braces, and I'm going to simply say post dot body. That's all. Now I have created a div here, and inside this div I have written an HTML, that is h3 and paragraph, and inside h3 I have inserted the title of the post, and inside paragraph I have inserted the body of the post. But all this HTML and all these tags and data are created inside JavaScript only. I haven't injected all these lines of code inside this HTML. So here if I go to the browser and if I refresh it here, ignore this error, you might say this is blank, it is not showing me anything. But here you might be saying, but hey, we have created all this div out here, we have created all these elements inside the div, and we have given the title and body as well, but why is it not showing? It is not showing because all this data is inside JavaScript only. We need to inject all these elements inside this div, inside this post container. So how can we do? So in order to do that, we have a function called Append Child. So here, as you see, I have created something called post container. So I'm just going to copy out this, and I'm going to paste it out here, and I'm going to say post container dot append child. I'm going to call this function, and I'm going to write div. Now once I write this function, what it is going to do is it is going to insert all this div with this h3 and p tag as a child, and it is going to inject this inside this post container div, and all this data is going to come out here via JavaScript. So let's go to the browser and see. We might be able to see some post. Let me refresh. Okay, we are not getting it. Why? Because it is saying reference error, data is not defined at display post. So we might have done some kind of typo out here. Okay, so here I have passed the data, but I haven't received it. Pretty classic mistake out there. Now let me save it and let me go to the browser, and you can see all the posts listed out here. So you can see pretty much, you can see all the posts. So this is how you are going to handle APIs in JavaScript. But this is just the get API that you are doing. But what if you want to post a data, right? Or what if you want to put the data? For that we need to go to this JSON placeholder, and then we can go to the guide. So there they have written pretty much in their documentation. We can see here. Let's just say I want to create a post. So what can I do? So here it is saying creating a resource. How to do? Same. I'm just going to write fetch function, pass the URL. But after passing the URL, I'm going to pass one more object, and inside this object I'm going to pass the method. Since I want to create a post, so that's why the method is going to be post, because this is a post request for creating a data. The method is post, and the inside the body I'm going to pass all the data in the JSON format. So I'm going to write json.stringify, and here title, and I'm going to pass the title of the data, and then I'm going to pass the body of the data, and then it is going to pass the user ID. And here I'm going to pass one more object called header, and I'm going to pass inside this header as content type application/JSON. It just means that I'm passing the data in the JSON format. So content type means what type of data are you sending from the client, that is from browser to the server, and I'm saying, hey, I'm sending data in the form of JSON format. So you just see here, I'm writing json.stringify, right? So let's just say if I'm passing plain text, then I'm going to write it here plain text. But since I'm passing data in the form of JSON format, so my content is JSON. So that's why the content type is going to be application/JSON. And this is just a character set code that is going to be UTF-8. So this is how we create a post. So let me just copy this here, and then let me post, and I'm going to show you out here. So let me write this code here, and then let me write title as learning APIs in JavaScript, and here inside body I'm going to write JS is super fun. Okay, so let me save, and then I just need to get this data here. Okay, I'm just logging it out here. Let me go to the browser, and you can see here. So I'm getting title JS is super fun. Okay, I've written super gun typo out there. Okay, and then after that, so it's calling, let's just wait, and here it's saying JS is super fun. The ID assigned is 101, the user ID is 1. That means one user ID is creating this post, and then the title, you can see the title whatever we have written out there. So this is how you create a data. Okay, now how do you update the data? So in order to update the data, the methods are pretty much same. We just do put request, that is being shown out here, updating a resource, and as you can see here, the method is written put, and you just update the data. That's how we update our data. And in order to delete a resource, we just pass the method delete, and it is going to delete it. So that's it, guys. This is an guide through which you can call an API via JavaScript. You can create some data, you can update some data. I hope you like the content. If you like it, please subscribe my channel and hit that like button. It motivates me to make more such content, and I'm going to come up with more such amazing video next time.